Hi, everyone. Welcome to another session of an IFLS event, a talk by one of the visiting fellows. This is going to be our last talk for the year. Before all else, as you might have noticed, this talk is being recorded and will be posted. This is an exciting topic actually to end the year with. It's very interesting and new to me. When I read the title first, I thought how internet can change possibly feminism in some way, but how could it possibly save it? And I'm very much looking forward to learning more. Irene Mwendwa has been working on feminism in the Pan-African context for a long time, has experience in feminist organizational capacity. As per our usual norm, I'm not going to repeat her bio, which you may have had an opportunity to take a look at here, but I will ask her instead to follow the style that we have had for the year and give us an introduction to her overall work, what she does, and what she has been preoccupied with in the past little while. And then from that move to the actual specific topic of her presentation for today. So the time, as you might have noticed, is somewhat different from our usual time, given the time difference between where we are and where Irene is at this point. We plan to go for an hour and a half as usual. Irene, you could take about anywhere between 30 to 40 minutes for the talk and leave the rest for Q&A. That would be great. I look forward to the presentation, and the floor is all yours.
Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you very much, Liel, for the preparations throughout the year and throughout, the updates that you shared on email. And nice to see everyone on the call. Happy to have joined from Nairobi, Kenya. It's about 6 p.m. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from wherever you're coming from. And in Swahili, habari ya leo. I hope your day is going on well. My name is Irene Mwendwa. I am a lawyer by profession, and I'm a feminist, and I have been working in Pan-African women's rights for the past 8 years or so. I started my career or journey right in university, where I did my legal dissertation on women's political participation and how the electoral law and electoral design can assist women's participation into electoral politics. And then right from it, I joined the leading nonprofit in Kenya, that's the Kenya Human Rights Commission, where I also was interning and led the program for electoral governance, where together with the team, I contributed to the different discourses on women political participation in Kenya and in Africa as a whole. Specifically for the 2017 general election, I was the long-term election monitor for the Kenya elections, where we collected data about women's participation and any other opportunities that women had. And we were able to table this together with other civil society organizations to the Electoral Management Body and the government of Kenya. With that, they've used to table different discourses for the 2/3 gender rule and women's political participation in different government and leadership roles in the country. We have seen an increase, although we are not there yet. We have seen an increase of different governmental bodies having women leading them. On that premise, I was able to join a Pan-African feminist network that is known as the African Women Development and Communication Network, which was bringing together civil society, women rights organizations, and individual feminists to, campaign and lead work against women's rights, to be able to eradicate some gender norms such as female genital mutilation, eradicating early child marriage, and also really campaigning for young girls to complete their education. While I was at Feminet, I was able to create a passion, or increase a passion. My passion has always been to see that women continue to be visible in the different leadership positions. And from then on, I was able to look at how the internet is able to bring me that opportunity and that solution to some of these women leaders. From then on, I joined a feminist civic based organization in Kampala, Uganda, where I'm currently leading the feminist movement building and advocacy program. As you can see, the topic of the day and the work I do are exactly just what I walk, sing, write, and eat. So it's something that I'm going to be speaking over and beyond what I've prepared on the paper. And I'm going to be also speaking about personal experiences here and there based off of what I've been able to engage with different feminists in the continent. So to get right onto it, my paper for today, or the research that I've been conducting while at Policy and at as a visiting fellow for the Institute of Feminist Legal Studies at the University of York, I've been able to put together an analysis of why feminism is the better framework to look at the societal issues of the internet as against to gender equality and other frameworks that are available for increasing participation and eradicating discrimination of the internet. I choose feminism because it is celebrated to ensure that it is as inclusive as possible and to visibilize the very invisible norms and voices of different people and groups who have for a very long time been silenced, but their voices have not been heard. The other thing that my paper is going to get into today is on movement building, women's rights, feminism as a browser, and political leadership generally, and how the internet is able to bring all these key issues together so that we can be able to see an internet that is very well resourced to ensure it equips women and other minority groups. So should I get right into it, Prof?
Absolutely. Thanks.
Oh, okay. So to get right into it, we'll go, my background is against COVID-19. And, in October of 2019, the world declared a pandemic, and later, after a year, the October 2020, the UN Women declared the existence of a shadow pandemic as a result of the COVID-19 regulations that were brought upon us. So we saw that women's voices and women's existence was at risk because the campaigns and the work that they were doing in person had now been really reduced. And for those who did not have resources, they stopped completely organizing and engaging in the discourse. For those who were able, they joined the internet and continued with the discourse online. We saw so many Twitter accounts coming up, Facebook accounts, Instagram accounts, and different profiles online that was really continuing the work on women's rights and advocating for women's rights. Later on, we also saw an heightened or an increased level of online gender-based violence that led to also very many of these groups either reducing their engagement online completely or leaving the online profiles that they had created completely. What that means then is that the platform that they were engaging in, or that we all engage in as the internet, is designed in a way that is not accountable to us as feminists and women rights actors, and also as just women in general. We find that despite the internet being a social hall or providing a social hall for us to discuss our problems and find solutions, it's also aggravating because some of these issues are now coming up online and continue to be heightened. We've seen in different cases gendered misinformation, which has to some extent led to a lot of harm, where some women have been hurt physically, others have been killed. We've also seen a lot of fake news being spewed around about women's organizing, about just the different social movements that have been existing in our different countries, from Black Lives Matter, which is one of the biggest movements, to some of the small movements that are in our countries. The other thing that we have seen is that throughout the process is that there remains a constant item, that is data collection by these tech companies. At the end of the day, whatever actions happen on the internet, whether positive or negative, the tech companies still remain to be the people who gain and people who continue to get wealthy because of some of this data that has been collected from some of these social movements and social organizing that has come about from the internet. Going forward from that background, I will get straight into talking about how the internet of today, the way it has been designed, the way we have been conditioned to use it, continues to cause more harm as opposed to good. So we know that women online face a lot of harms, from defamation, hacking, impersonation, harassment, surveillance, hate speech, and trolling. We also know that high-profile women who are visible offline and online also face additional forms of attacks, as well as minority groups. We know that journalists, politicians, and influencers face these kinds of disproportionate violence that continues to harm the way they conduct themselves in their workplaces and how they also engage with their day-to-day tasks. So much so that that these narratives have even affected the health of some of these women. So what we also know is that the people who have designed the internet, the majority of the people in these roles are not women. The majority are men. And when they're designing this, they're designing the products and the internet using their perspective as men, using their experience as men, and using some of the notions and very invisible experiences as men, which continues to leave out women's personal experiences, women's first-hand experience, and also women's sentiments about their own experience online. So really, even when we seek to address some of these harms that have come about from the internet, we see that even at the end of it, when you ask these victims or survivors of the different forms of violence, do you feel that you have received justice, or do you think that you have received justice? You find that the law, as well as some of the internet solutions or solutions that are available on these internet sites, have not provided first-hand or ready solutions and justice to these survivors. And therefore, we look at that issue as being a very design and technological issue that continues to make women shun away from using the internet. But at the same time, we find that there are different groups of feminists who are online using the internet with so much vigor and providing as much as data and information as much as possible, that continues to show these tech companies, to show other users that it is your own duty to ensure that you remain resilient and provide support to ensure that you get justice. The gender blindness we see from this technological design of the internet has led to a different user experience if we compare the experience of men and women online. Case in point, I was part of a team who conducted the study and a policy on the 2021 Uganda elections, and we found that women generally, after being abused online, they stepped out of the internet and they said, I have so many other things to deal with back at home, back in the office, back in the community, that if I concentrate on the physical world and the things that it offers me, I'll be able to continue with my work peacefully. Yet men continued engaging online. Their visibility online increased. They were not, shy to continue using the internet despite any forms of violence or attacks coming or directed at them. And in the communities, it seems like they're doing a lot of work, even when looking at men and women, looking at the work that both were doing were the same or were different for men and women. So we thought about how, how can the women's rights movement come in, and how can feminists all over the world contribute to some of these issues that are being stemmed by the internet and the societal issues that are coming out because of the internet of today. And we thought specifically about the role of the women's movement. Looking at Africa alone, there are so many women's rights movements. There are very many feminists who are working both online and offline. And when it comes to those who are organizing offline, we know that they're doing remarkable work. They may or may not have access to the right infrastructure to engage and tap to the potential of the internet. But the people and the feminists who are readily accessible to the internet infrastructure have tried as much as possible to document some of this work. So documenting some of the work that the women's rights movement has done and the feminist movement has done in Africa and all over the globe is one of the evidence that we can use to share with tech companies, with innovators, with policymakers, and with governments to show that, look, this is the effort that is being made against issues like gender-based violence. These are the efforts that are being made against societal norms, different societal norms, and we hope and pray that regulations that are coming into place cater to some of these things when it comes to the internet. Therefore, documentation of the efforts of women's rights movements and just the daily engagement of feminists online is one of the key reasons why we should promote the internet and promote for the infrastructure to be accessible to all, so that some of this data may be used to influence agendas and also influence societal changes in terms of behavioral changes in the future. The other thing we hope and we know that will come about even because of the COVID-19 pandemic, internet, the rise of the internet use is that the documentation and the data that has been collected by these feminists and women's rights movement is able to also speak on behalf of those who are coming after us, in the future. What do we want the future to look like? So the evidence will show that these are the numbers of people who are using the internet and facing harm vis-a-vis the numbers that we want to see in the future. So these kinds of engagements will be able to help policymakers deduce and make laws that are responsive and will actually actualize a safe internet for all. The other thing about the internet and the opportunities it gives to all of us is that the role that women play as scientists, as STEM actors, as designers, and as innovators is that they will be able to contribute directly about their own experiences, which will be on behalf of the rest of the women. And in that case, then we will be able to have a feminist browser or a feminist internet, because women innovators will go and collaborate and engage some of these traditional designers who have always been men to tell them, look, this is not working if you're not showing the true colors of what's happening on this internet. For instance, you will see that many of the internet sites that you use, different social media platforms that you use, continuously change their safety guidelines, continuously change their privacy guidelines. All this is based off of the data and information that they have received from the users who are you and me, and also users who are in different collectives such as women's rights movements and feminists. So going forward, we know that the internet will be and is going to be feminist because of the contributions of the very many feminists who have been very proactive in ensuring that they put to a stop some of the cultural and societal actions that have been coming online, and also really how they've been using the internet as a social hall to campaign against different issues. Therefore, people will be using and will find themselves using the internet to cause more good than harm, as what we are seeing in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. So going forward, what really is a clarion call from the tech companies and governments is that when you're engaging online as a woman and as just a contributor, is to ensure that when you're experiencing a form of abuse, make sure that you report it so that this information can be used to improve these tech sites. And therefore, the scientists who are behind it and technologists who are behind these social platforms will be able to improve some of these harms that we are experiencing. The other thing to note is that we come from different backgrounds, we speak different languages, and we experience life differently. Our diversity is not well represented in the innovators. The innovators, as we know currently, majority of them are in the global north because, of course, of the resources that are available to them and the policies that provide a level playing field for them to be able to explore all ideas. We know that the same is not the case for the global south. And therefore, it is a clarion call that these innovators who have sought and found an opportunity to be able to put out different innovations, work with other groups who are not able to put out their innovations because of resources, to ensure that they support them in the best way they can through policy making, sharing of agendas, and setting agendas that promote good internet policies and laws in the different contexts, so that we can have a diverse of internet users and internet innovators, which will address some of these background and diverse issues that we experience when we engage online. Going again to the issue of feminism as a browser, we know that continuously providing data as to the different experiences we have as users online is also a key to ensuring that the internet remains as diverse as possible and accommodates diverse groups as much as possible. It is therefore important that we recognize that, there are different roles that all of us play, and courses, academia, and governments should ensure that they provide room for digital literacy and education that gives everyone a general understanding of how the internet works and the basics of the internet, so that we can continue to have a diverse voice when engaging with internet and technology policy. Going straight into it, the very best way that we know governments can get into internet policy and tech policy is to look at what already exists. And specifically for Africa, we have so many international and regional treaties that many countries are party to. At the AU level, we have the Africa Charter on Human and People's Rights. We have the Africa Women Rights Charter, which is one of the leading treatises in the world. And we also have the African Charter on Democracy, Elections, and Governance. The codes of conduct and the way we apply these treatises and laws will promote the way policymakers and elected officials engage with the agenda of the internet. Increasingly, we have seen that in councils, in parliaments, in public and community debates, people are able to debate on every other issue, that is education, we have health, we have agriculture, we have, community wellness, but the issue of the internet is increasingly being left out. And yet we have laws that have put in place some of these measures to be considered. So we know that, for instance, the code of conduct for the Africa Charter on Democracy and Elections and Governance under Articles 19 to 21 provide for the wellness during elections, and for zero tolerance on any form of violence during elections. So the same conduct that is expected offline is what is expected to happen online during electioneering period, which should also be something that politicians and elected officials should be drumming up upon. We know that there have been so many conflicts because of elections, and all of these are emanating from different conversations that are either happening through the media, traditional media, or now, in our case, because of COVID-19, digital media. To some extent, internet shutdowns have also been imposed to reduce or to curb freedom of expressions in these states. So we know that following the existing laws is going to be a wonderful tool to ensure that the internet is inclusive and is free from any forms of abuse. Therefore, it is a clarion call for civic organizations, women rights organizations, the technology companies themselves, World Bank, and other organizations to ensure that the laws that are in place are being used to the last, are being explored and used to the last of them, so that they can be able to protect the communities from harm. And to just go into the almost end of my presentation is to look at how the citizens can also participate effectively into internet governance. We know that there are several caucuses that have come about concerned with the issues of the internet. And we know that they're looking at different issues that affect internet and tech policy pertaining to penetration of the infrastructure, affordability of data and the internet infrastructure, looking at how easy it is to understand some of these digital concerns, and also looking at the usability of the internet infrastructure in our countries. So what again, the role that these groups of people together with feminists continue to play is that they will provide evidence, and evidence is data that is going to be used to set different agendas to ensure that different leaderships and governments engage with these issues and engage with this information to ensure that they have brought about policies and laws that address some of these challenges. And yeah, that is the end of my presentation. I've summarized about 10 pages so that I don't go over time. Yeah, I'm now ready. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this presentation. I'll invite questions if there are any, or comments. I have a question, but I'll just wait to get a few and then come back. Any questions?
You can go ahead, Hengame.
Okay, so I'll just ask one question and then come back for one more if there is time. I just kind of wanted to get your sense if there has been any work, or the organizations you've been working with may have done any research on the ways that actually internet might, and I'm not sure if that's the case, but might have harmed the women's rights movements in some way. So if we were speaking outside the context of the role of internet in providing or fostering organizational capacity, one can think of many different ways in which women have suffered, in the world of internet violence, cyber violence of different kinds. But now, if you're only speaking in the context of organizational capacity and advocacy, I'm wondering in what ways actually one could argue, or have you thought of counter arguments to your mostly favorable position toward the role of internet. I know that you know, there are references to the problems and the different kinds of tactics that in the age of internet advocacy women would have to use, but in what ways you can see this technological advancement as actually against the feminist movement?
Okay, thank you very much for that, Prof. To be honest, you're very right. It's an issue that has emanated. We will shy away from saying that the internet has brought about maybe things like division and differences between the movement, but to be quite honest, it is there because of resources. The way resources are shared and the way resources are available to the movement and to different organizations gives them the power or the ability to remain visible. So with that alone, we know that the visibility for some organizations may be seen that, you know, they're doing remarkable work, whereas those who don't have the resources to organize online and to constantly share online may also show that maybe they're not working as much online, whether through their websites, whether through their socials. So you're very right, Professor, by saying that, is there a way that the internet has brought about a difference in the organizing of organizations and movements? Yes, it has, in terms of the way resources are shared in these organizations. And then the second bit, the understandability or the usability of these tech platforms. Some platforms are very difficult for some organizers, women human rights defenders, and even women government officials to engage in. So whereas others have advanced and have managed to showcase their brilliant work and continue to engage with other jurisdictions on the internet, there are some who are even yet to understand the practicability of even using an email, for instance. So you're very right. The experience on the internet is different for individuals, for organizations, and for movement. But the clarion call remains for those who are able and for those with power and for those with the resources to try as much as possible to share with those who may not be in the same position with them. Yeah, I hope I've answered the best.
So thank you so much. So if I could just quickly follow up. So in terms of outreach, you know, there is no question that connectivity or the possibility of making, not just making connections, not just trying to in some way regionally or universally expand the work, but also in terms of making different kinds of alliance with different groups. There's no question that, you know, we live in a different time, but then again, you know, when you think about the feminist movement historically has been able to make such breathtaking, you know, advancements between whenever, you know, you can go back for as long as you would like in different ways. But if you were to artificially consider 1960s onwards, you know, all these advances have happened without technology, right? So when one say the internet has saved feminism, I'm just thinking if there should be something more than the possibility of connection, because that's just the clearest advantages of living in a world of fast connectivity. Other than that, if I could just push you a bit to think about substantively what this possibility of connectivity has done to feminism in general. And I realize that I'm just using a big word for many different things, but let's just say to the advancement of women's rights. Simply put, what the internet has substantively done, has it actually affected the substance of the movement, at least in the context you are more familiar with and are working in, the Pan-African context? Has the substance of the movement changed as a result of working, in the context and under the shadow of the possibilities of the virtual world.
Okay, I will start by appreciating that it is very hard work. It is very difficult work. Those who came before us did their best. And those of us who are in it now are continuing to do their best because we are fighting patriarchy, whichever tool you use. So I would say that, yes, the internet has increased and created the ability for very many organizations, women human rights defenders, to be able to evidence their work. And with that, it has made many also acknowledge the efforts of what women are doing and the efforts of eradicating patriarchy and other societal norms. So I'm proud to say that, yes, the internet is a tool, but the product that is data, that is the evidence, that is you and me looking at each other, you being able to read a legal book that was a feminist book that was authored 1,000 years ago because of the internet. That kind of evidence has really, really, really helped the movement in Africa. However, we note that not without flaws, because now we know there is a lot of data that was never verified from our history. So many people are now, of course, learning and unlearning. As we go forward, we are also trying to correct some of the past things that were said that were not accurate and just trying to rectify that, while at the same time also using the internet to record what is happening now so that it can be able to be used as evidence and data for policy change going forward. So yeah, it's a balance of both yes and no, but it has done more good than harm. Yeah, I can see Janet's hand is up.
Yeah.
Thanks very much, Irene. I had some questions about data collection and the challenges of data collection. And I guess where I'm coming from is really a focus on the ways in which the internet is used to facilitate forms of intimate partner violence. And certainly a part of that is the way in which women's use of technology, including the internet, social media, is intensely surveilled by their abusive partners. And I think you alluded to this earlier in talking about the shadow pandemic and the increase in technology facilitated intimate partner violence. But I think in that context, data collection can be really, I think, very, very difficult and makes a pernicious form of violence that I think has greatly expanded, very, very hard to capture. So I was interested in your reflections about trying to capture what goes on in that kind of intimate domain and the ways in which the internet is used to perpetuate violence. And then I was also interested in your thoughts about, even assuming we can capture through evidence lots of the harms that are happening, to what extent do you think that evidence of harm is actually something that motivates platform providers to change? Because to date, I think we see little evidence of motivation to change, notwithstanding some pretty clear evidence about harm. So again, kind of what you're thinking about the ways in which that a very, let's say, fully collected evidence, you have a really good database that demonstrates the harm, will that actually motivate platform users to change, or what's really required is government regulation and enforcement, including regulation of platform providers?
Okay, thank you very much, Janet. Pretty heavy questions there that we will both really deliberate on, because as I had said earlier, this is difficult work. And now when it comes to partner violence, even the law itself is unable to come between partner engagement, to the extent that even when you go to the law courts and you're seeking a divorce, it's it's really judged differently because you're given time to really think about it as partners, of course, where there is no case of harm and so many other things, looking heavily on the Commonwealth laws. So when it comes to partner violence and evidence collection, I know that there are so many tech companies who have tried to share tenets of different forms of violence that happens. And at the same time, I know that there's so many other intragovernmental organizations who are trying to use the internet to get ahead of such vices. The thing with internet partner violence, just as general gender-based violence, it's emanating from our societal norms and cultures, which we are also fighting to eradicate day after day. So these tenets or these behaviors have now shifted online, making the work that was happening offline or in the physical world even more difficult to engage in when it comes to even the data collection and just engaging some of these individuals who may be facing these kinds of harm. So it's difficult. Tech companies, for lack of a better way of putting this, I'm not making an excuse for them. They don't have the stats. The data they are heavily relying on is within our palms, within our phones, within our laptops. They really heavily rely on us giving them this information to make some of these radical changes that we expect them to do. But at the same time, I know that governments have a very huge role to play to ensure that innovators and these tech companies and businesses and enterprises are actually not promoting any of these vices. For instance, if you see different tech products, thank you so much, Nima. Different tech products have different ways of engaging with different forms of violence that is being addressed. And therefore, it's for us, maybe just like many European countries have done, at the European Union level, to try and put regulations that are very uniform and force tech companies to address things like violence immediately and then expeditiously. And then to go to your second question in terms of however much the evidence has captured the increased and heightened violence, have they really done something? Working with them for the past maybe 2 years, I've seen that, of course, just like very many other entities we really hold accountable, they're also quite bureaucratic. And that is why feminist work is the key to some of these issues being addressed, because we will never tire, despite this work being quite difficult. We will continue to provide the evidence that is required to ensure that they change their systems, they change their setup. And in terms of the design of these products, we will continue to call on more women to be engaged in STEM and in the design of these technology products so that they can be able to contribute to address some of these challenges. It's, again, an issue of all this evidence being available and policies working to ensure that they address some of these challenges that all of us face while we're engaging on the internet. Yes. I hope I've been able to speak to some of the nuances that you had asked about.
Yes, thanks very much, Irene. That was really helpful.
Thank you. And I've shared a report in the chats in case anyone wants to get right into it.
Any other questions? Okay, Irene, is there anything else you would like to add if there are no questions?
I have nothing else to add. Maybe for additional information about this and some of the work that we do, you can check out our website, which I have shared in the chats. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for coming. Thank you so much, Irene, for the presentation and for all your engagement with this issue and for your organizational and policy work. And good luck with all of that. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.